use his switch left kick a couple times to the leg where he would tap with his right hand to measure, draw attention away from the kick, as well as rotate counterclockwise so he could put some torque into that leg kick. And a few times in the fight, it was landing effectively on Tony Ferguson, where Ferguson was constantly giving different looks, switching stances, going low, just making it very unorthodox, unpredictable for Donald Cerrone. And that is one of the reasons why Donald Cerrone wasn't going to as many kicks as you would think. The unpredictability, as well as Tony Ferguson constantly moving forward. Planting to kick is very hard to do when the opponent is constantly pushing you back. And you don't want to be off balance, especially when Tony Ferguson's on top of you. And whenever it comes to Tony Ferguson's fights, there's really no pattern to the way he fights. He fights extremely instinctively. He does things very different throughout the entire fight. Nothing is too much of the same, but there were a couple patterns, there were a couple things that Tony kept going to in this fight. One was a kick-jab combo. So many times he'll go with the push kick from a far distance and end it with the same side hand. And sometimes he'll commit with a round leg kick instead of the front kick. And the only time he was really ever throwing kicks was to constantly offset Cerrone, and was when he was trying to enter from the outside. So if he was an outside range, which is where Donald Cerrone would want this fight, Tony would just pressure his way in behind a kick, especially those front kicks. Tony was able to make his way in and get in mid-range or close range, and that is where he had the advantage in the fight. Constantly throughout the fight, this is also a reason why Cerrone wasn't able to commit with too many kicks himself, is Tony Ferguson stayed in mid-range throughout most of the fight, at long boxing range. And to plant in front of Tony Ferguson to throw a kick at that range, Tony has that short amount of time to get right on the inside and catch Cerrone off balance. And with all the switching stances and the constant different looks Tony was giving, he was also entering exchanges with one stance. So let's say orthodox or southpaw, it doesn't really matter. He would enter with one stance, and then he would exit out with another. Enter with orthodox and exit in southpaw. He would enter in southpaw and exit in orthodox. And this is throwing off the instinctive target for Donald Cerrone mid-exchange. And when Tony was exiting, he was constantly looking to counter Cerrone if Cerrone wanted to blitz in. And that's something Cerrone was doing a lot in this fight as well. He was blitzing in, trying to land combinations, and switching as he's doing it. He was covering a lot of distance, but the punches aren't really too much extended, and Tony Ferguson was easily able to just get outside of those punches, slip them, block them. He would usually land a check hook, depending which stance he's in, as well as a counter jab. And with the reach advantage that he has, it was extremely effective and efficient. And talking about that jab, man, that was the story of this fight. Tony Ferguson's jab was catching Cerrone standing still too many times, to the point where I believe it broke his nose. We don't know if there was the punch at the end of the fight that did it, but there was a lot of jabs getting thrown at Cerrone's face, and I believe his orbital bone broke because of those jabs. The power in Tony Ferguson's hands is pretty underrated. It looked like Cerrone went through a 5-round fight at the end of the second round, mainly because of those jabs. And I think a lot of people were missing in this fight was Tony Ferguson was slipping and rolling with so many punches. It looks like they were landing clean, but most of the shots were just nicking him. They were just skidding off him or catching him when his head is moving with the punch. The impact is actually getting decreased because of the overextension of the punch that Cerrone has to commit with to just land at the end of it. And not only was Tony switching to get away from Cerrone, he was also switching with the body and head kicks. So instead of your usual checking of the kick, blocking the kicks with your arms, Ferguson would see the setup coming and constantly switching his stance with the kick and rolling them. Extremely unorthodox stuff you see from Tony Ferguson. Now let's get through some of the moments of the fight here. So toward the end of the first round, Cerrone landed one of his hardest punches in the entire fight, and it was a big error from Tony Ferguson. So, both standing in front of each other, Cerrone flares out his right elbow to commit with the right straight. This is a huge tell whenever fighters are going to go for their straight, and Tony Ferguson's able to see it coming, he's able to see the telegraph, so he pulls on the punch, but he tries to parry it with his right hand, which is actually the opposite. Like a lot of things Tony Ferguson does, it's the opposite of what you usually want to do. And the reason for that is, you're pairing their right hand, their power hand, which is farther away, with your right hand, which is farther away. And now what you're doing is you're creating an opening on your right side for the closer hand of your opponent, making it a lot easier for them to find home with that hand. So that's exactly what happens here. Tony pulling down the right hand of Cerrone opens up that side of himself, and Cerrone is lunging in. Remember, he always commits with these blitz style combinations, always switching stances to get his way in, and when he's switching stances on his way in, he's also covering a lot of distance, and as he switches to southpaw, he lands that left hook clean on Ferguson. And then we move here, and Cerrone starts being the aggressor late in the round, and he took a page out of Tony Ferguson's book where he goes and throws a right body kick kick, which Ferguson, of course, switches with, and now he's in the orthodox position, and Donald Cerrone follows up his right kick with his right jab. Tony Ferguson is able to slip just on the inside of the punch when he goes and commits with his own left hand, and he tries to weave under, as Cerrone goes and tries to follow up with his left hand. Remember, Cerrone usually goes left, right with these blitz style combinations. That's why it's more of a blitz, and he likes to switch stances, but that just misses as well. The target of Cerrone got thrown off, and he found himself in the parallel stance, but also when he kind of moved to his left, he also made Tony Ferguson face him in the parallel stance. Tony didn't move in the parallel stance. And as Tony is weaving to his left, he's also coming with that big right overhand because there's a lot of momentum going that direction. And Cerrone, after throwing the left hand, of course, he's going to go for his right hand. So he tries to go for another right straight. And Tony Ferguson is able to land right over the top because Cerrone's head is not really moving. It's kind of still while Tony is moving his head. And this is why the punch of Cerrone gets thrown off and he gets wide open for the big punch, gets connected clean. And this is when Tony Ferguson makes the adjustment to get himself in a safer position. He moves back his right foot. And the reason why he's moving back his right foot is because he wants to commit with his left hand, right? He just do a big right overhand. It's going to be really hard to commit again with that side. So he's moving back his right leg naturally so he can get away and counter with that long check left hook. And because he moved his foot back, the target for Cerrone gets a lot smaller and further away. When you go from parallel to orthodox, your head, don't even try to move your head naturally moves away, and this is a game of inches. Cerrone also has a reach discrepancy against Tony Ferguson, and because Ferguson switched into orthodox, he's able to reach in with his left hand a lot more than the parallel stance, because when you're in the parallel stance, your shoulders are square. Nothing is really in front of the other. When you're in orthodox, your left shoulder is forward. And because of this, he connects again clean on Cerrone, and Cerrone's punch, of course, because of all this involved, falls short. And this, I believe, actually stunned Donald Cerrone because Cerrone went from brawling, exchanging with Tony Ferguson to then suddenly moving away from Ferguson. And then we go to the second round, and Tony Ferguson moves forward, and just like usual, when he tries to enter from a far distance, he commits with that kick. But this time, he actually goes for a left round kick to the head of Cerrone, and just like we know, Cerrone is very good with kicks, very good defending them, very good at throwing them. He's able to defend the kick very well, and actually land his own counter shot. So it's a naked high kick. Cerrone blocks it, but he only blocks it with one hand. He tries to block it with both like you usually do, because when you block it with one, the power can get right through and still rattle your brain. In this case, the right arm is the padding. The right arm is the one that absorbs the blow, while the left hand, or the left arm, is the one that usually kind of pushes the impact away, pushes the power away to decrease the amount of impact on the absorption of the right arm. But when you only have the right arm to block with, such as Cerrone here, who missed his left hand, there's only the absorption of the full power of the kick, where sometimes the impact left of the blow can make its way through and even cause a knockout, such as Lyoto Machida versus Mark Munoz. But right after Cerrone blocks it, and Tony is retracting the kick, it's a long retraction, Cerrone comes over the top with a right overhand. So he goes from blocking to throwing forward his right overhand with no windup, just to connect on Tony Ferguson off balance. And one of the most beautiful things you've seen in this fight was in the middle of the second round where Tony Ferguson lands that spinning elbow. So he does his usual thing with his jab. He reaches forward with his upper body, throws that long jab at Cerrone's face. Cerrone was actually able to parry it with his left hand, and he tries to counter with his right hand, which is actually a pretty good counter on a southpaw Tony Ferguson, because you parry their right hand to your right side, which makes their head follow where their punch is going. If they commit into a punch and lunge in, and you parry it to one side, their body's gonna follow where their punch is going. And because of this, he's making Tony follow where Cerrone's right hand will be. So Cerrone is trying to intercept him with a big right overhand. If this would have connected, it would have been clean, it would have been devastating. But this isn't boxing. And what Tony Ferguson does is something that can save you in this kind of situation. He goes and spins with that momentum. Very crafty move from Tony Ferguson. He goes and spins and ducks under the right hand, and because Cerrone committed fully into this right hand, thinking he had the edge on Ferguson in this exchange, he falls right into the spinning back elbow, but his head actually hits the shoulder of Tony Ferguson before the elbow's able to land, so it decreased a lot of the power. Great move by Tony Ferguson there. And then we move here, and Tony Ferguson engages Cerrone a little bit. Cerrone goes and taps and tries to trap the lead hand of Tony Ferguson with his own right hand. They're both in orthodox. And I believe potentially he was probably going to go to the switch kick to the leg, but he could be just trying to trap it for some other reason. And Tony Ferguson pulls his hand up away from Cerrone's and lands a left elbow over the top. Because Cerrone is extending his right hand forward, there's nothing defending that side on top of it. I'm surprised that he didn't have a grip on Tony Ferguson's hand to not allow Ferguson to pull his whole hand away instead of just curling the elbow over. But Ferguson lands clean on Donald Cerrone. This is probably the most powerful strike in the entire fight so far, besides maybe the last punch. And then a few seconds after, Ferguson just shoots out a telegraph and naked right cross and just connects on Donald Cerrone. Cerrone just standing still ate the punch. And Tony Ferguson's an orthodox, and then he pushes off Tony Ferguson's face and exits away in southpaw, as well as making almost a 90-degree angle exit. I mean, that's a very sharp angle, and I'm surprised Cerrone did nothing to stop this. This probably means that Cerrone was just a little bit too battered at this point. And now just briefly looking at the ending sequence, Tony Ferguson wasn't really throwing punches at the end. Tony Ferguson, yes, he initiated the exchange. He came after Cerrone and they both exchanged jabs. But Cerrone started following up with his own combination, really swarming Tony Ferguson, and Ferguson was trying to defend. He switches backwards into southpaw and his instincts completely took over. I mean, he's under heavy fire from Cerrone and he's getting out of there. And once he gets on the outside, just like he did the entire fight, he switches back and throws that long right jab. I believe it was complete instincts. It wasn't on purpose that he landed after the bell. This just shows he was just defending himself, right? He wasn't really thinking about the horn, and Dan Miragliotta is a bit too far, right? Hearing the 10-second thing, he should be a bit closer. Just like at the end of the first round, Dan Miragliotta was very close to the two. He got in between them very quickly. Here, he's way too far away, and he doesn't get in until like 2 seconds after the punch lands. And this punch probably did a lot of damage to the nose of Cerrone, but at the end of the day, it was Cerrone who blew his nose and blew up his eye because of it. And I believe at the end of the day, this saved Donald Cerrone. He had a broken orbital bone, which didn't have to do with this. And he was just getting battered. He was getting beaten up at the end. And the third round would have most likely been terrible for Donald Cerrone. And with the win streak that Tony Ferguson's on, the competition that he has beaten, I believe there's no lightweight in the world ever probably that has beaten the competition that Tony Ferguson has beaten. Combine that with the streak, you can make an argument that Tony Ferguson is the greatest lightweight of all time. Of course, it's subjective, it's just a debate, it's an argument, but Tony Ferguson's definitely a special fighter. He does things that really only work for him, that makes sense to him. There's a lot of things that he does that just anybody else will try to replicate and they'll probably get in trouble for it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. My next video is probably going to be the breakdown on maybe the other two championship fights. They should be out probably today or tomorrow, so be on the lookout for those. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.